A new UN report says the Palestinian economy is facing an unprecedented collapse, wiping out decades of development in both Gaza and the occupied West Bank. By the end of 2024, the Palestinian economy had shrunk to just 70% of its size 2 years earlier. And GDP per capita, a key measure of living standards, had fallen back to where it was in 2003, erasing 22 years of development progress in less than 2 years. In the occupied West Bank, the expansion of illegal Israeli settlements, tight restrictions on people's movement, and Israel's withholding of Palestinian tax revenues drove the economy down by 17%, returning families to income levels last seen more than a decade ago. Gaza's economy has almost disappeared, falling by more than 80% in just a year. GDP per capita has dropped to $161, losing nearly 7 decades of human development, with Israel only allowing a trickle of aid and goods into the Strip. Inflation in Gaza has soared by 230%. More than 80% of Gaza's population is now unemployed, leaving nearly every household without income. Ubai Al-Aboudi is Executive Director at the Bisan Center for Research and Development. He joins us now live from Ramallah. Thank you so much for your time. So the numbers in this report are pretty dire. So if I pick up on Gaza's GDP per capita figure, that's fallen back to 2003 levels. Even seeing the destruction firsthand, are you surprised by how far the economy has collapsed in just 2 years of war?
Well, actually, this is a genocide. So the systematic destruction of Palestinian infrastructure, Palestinian businesses, Palestinian livelihoods, the extensive destruction of Palestinian agricultural land, this is all systematic. When you wage a war, according to international law, you're not supposed to target civilian infrastructure or infrastructure that is important to maintain the livelihoods of the people. These are war crimes. So what we are seeing is a systematic targeting. In Gaza, for example, 95% of agricultural land has been destroyed. Almost all of Gaza's boats that used to be used by Gaza fisher people to fish have been destroyed without posing any danger. People cannot even access the lands that they used to cultivate in order to maintain livelihoods. But this is not just the actions of the past 2 years. It has been exacerbated by the actions of Israel in the past 2 years, but it has been systematic and part and parcel of the Israeli occupation ever since 1967, with the entire Israeli policies built on the destruction of Palestinian livelihoods, not the maintaining of a Palestinian economy or Palestinian livelihood.
So just to confirm, you are saying that Israel's policies, from strikes on civilian infrastructure to the blockade even before that, are deliberately meant to cause this economic collapse?
Yes, it's not just these destruction and the military actions. Even some military orders and decrees, like, for example, the restrictions on import and exports in the West Bank, the threat to cutting off the economic relations between Palestinian banks and Israeli banks, which Palestinian banks are reliant on in order to facilitate imports, because Israel controls all of the crossings and all of the shipments of goods and services to the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. If you look at the totality of these measures, these are by design. For example, what Israel has done since October 2023 is collapse not just the Gaza economy, but also the West Bank economy. If you look at the main indicators of West Bank economy for employment, for example, about 1/4 of the employed people used to work in the Israeli economy. They have been cut off overnight, although it was a systematic process by the Israeli occupation to make agriculture not sustainable for Palestinian farmers in order to attract Palestinian workers or peasants to become workers, daily wage workers in the Israeli economy. So they cut them off without any rights overnight. If you look at the other 25% of employed people, they used to work for, or they are working for, the Palestinian Authority. Israel has basically bankrupted the Palestinian Authority. Today we are talking about that On average, Palestinian workers for the government are owed about 13-month salaries. So can you imagine that workers that barely get by are getting paid, or the government owes them for a year and 1 month or 2 months of salaries just in the past couple of years. If you look at the education sector, Israel has basically collapsed it. Internal and external trade. Internal trade, for example, in the West Bank, around 1,000 Israeli checkpoints had made internal trade virtually impossible. And Israel basically annexing, de facto annexing 60% of the West Bank lands, which include the agricultural areas, the water sources, have basically killed Palestinian agriculture, including the olive oil season, which used to contribute about 4.5% to Palestinian GDP. So what we are talking about is a systematic policy, not just a byproduct of Israeli military action.
Many thanks for your time today. Ubai Al-Aboudi, Executive Director at the Bisan Center for Research and Development.
Thank you.
Don't miss out the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.